Hey there, Boss Economics World crew. It's your boy, the host with the most, economic roast, that is. Buckle up, because today we're diving headfirst into the tariff tantrum that's got the global economy shaking in its boots. Oh, and don't worry, we're not letting the government off the hook, spoiler alert, they're the ones lighting the fuse on this economic dumpster fire. Let's go. Ladies and gentlemen, grab your popcorn, because the latest episode of As the Tariff World Turns just dropped, and it's a doozy. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent, Donald Trump's right-hand man in this economic melodrama, stepped up to the mic on April 23, 2025, at an Institute of International Finance event in Washington, D.C., to tell us what we already knew: the U.S. isn't waving the white flag on tariffs against China anytime soon. But wait, plot twist. Trump himself, just a day earlier, teased that tariffs will come down substantially but won't be zero, because apparently, he doesn't want to play hardball with Chinese leader Xi Jinping. Cue the dramatic music. Now, if you're like me, you're probably thinking, wait, what? Are we escalating or de-escalating? Are we fighting or flirting? Welcome to the Trump administration's economic policy playbook, folks, where confusion is the strategy, and chaos is the outcome. But don't worry, Bessent tried to clean up the mess, saying, I don't think either side believes the current tariff levels are sustainable, so I would not be surprised if they went down in a mutual way. Translation: we're stuck in a stare-down with China, and neither side wants to blink first, but hey, maybe we'll both blink at the same time, eventually. Oh, and if you're waiting for a timeline on this so-called mutual de-escalation, don't hold your breath, Bessent says there's no timeframe for engagement. Awesome. Just what the global economy needs, more uncertainty. Now, let's do what we do best here at Boss Economics World, peel back the layers of this economic onion, from the core issues to the surface-level symptoms, and trust me, it's gonna make you cry. Because behind this tariff tug-of-war lies a laundry list of economic problems, and, shocker, the government's mismanagement is front and center. First off, let's talk about the elephant in the room: tariffs. The Trump administration has been wielding tariffs like a sledgehammer, smashing away at global trade in the name of America First. But here's the thing: tariffs aren't free. They're a tax, plain and simple, and guess who's paying it? Not China. Not Xi Jinping. It's you, me, and every American consumer and business getting gouged at the checkout counter. According to the American Action Forum, U.S. tariffs on Chinese goods have cost American consumers and businesses over $195 billion since 2018. And that's not even counting the ripple effects, higher production costs, supply chain disruptions, and retaliatory tariffs from China that have crushed American exporters, especially farmers. Soybean exports to China, for example, plummeted by 74% in 2019 alone, thanks to Beijing's tit-for-tat tariffs, and they've never fully recovered. But hey, maybe it's all part of the grand plan, right? Bessent says the administration is looking at multiple factors beyond tariffs, like non-tariff barriers and government subsidies. Sure, that sounds great on paper, but let's not kid ourselves, this is a negotiation tactic, not a strategy. And while they're busy posturing, the global economy is teetering on the edge of a cliff. The International Monetary Fund, IMF, warned in its April 2025 World Economic Outlook that ongoing trade tensions could shave 0.8% off global GDP by 2026 if they escalate further. That's $800 billion in lost economic output, folks. But hey, who needs growth when you've got political points to score? Now, let's zoom out to the bigger picture. Bessent says a full rebalancing of trade with China might take 2 to 3 years. Rebalancing? Really? That's just a fancy way of saying, we're gonna keep slapping tariffs on everything until China cries uncle. But here's the harsh truth: the US-China trade deficit isn't some evil plot cooked up in Beijing, it's a symptom of deeper structural problems in the US economy, and tariffs aren't fixing squat. For starters, the US trade deficit with China hit $419 billion in 2024, according to the US Census Bureau, and it's on track to widen further in 2025. Why? Because Americans love cheap stuff, and China's got the manufacturing muscle to deliver. But instead of addressing the root causes, like our over-reliance on consumption, underinvestment in domestic manufacturing, or the fact that corporate tax cuts have fueled stock buybacks instead of job creation, the government's solution is to just tax imports and call it a day. Genius, right? And let's not forget the other side of the coin: China's not exactly playing fair either. Their government subsidies, state-owned enterprises, and non-tariff barriers, like forcing US companies to hand over intellectual property, distort global trade. But here's the kicker: tariffs don't solve those problems. If anything, they make it worse by isolating the US from global supply chains. Just look at the semiconductor industry. The US CHIPS Act of 2022 was supposed to bring chip manufacturing back home, but as of 2025, only 2% of global chip production happens in the US, down from 37% in 1990, according to the Semiconductor Industry Association. Why? Because tariffs and trade wars have made it harder, not easier, for US companies to compete. Now, let's zoom back to the surface, the symptoms of this economic mess that you're feeling in your wallet every day. The tariff standoff with China isn't just a bilateral spat, it's a global economic time bomb. The World Bank's Global Economic Prospects report from January 2025 warns that ongoing trade tensions, combined with rising interest rates and geopolitical uncertainty, could push the global economy into a recession by 2026. And guess who's leading the charge on that front? Yep, the US government. Here's the data to back it up. US GDP growth slowed to a measly 1.6% in Q1 2025, according to the Bureau of Economic Analysis, down from 3.4% in Q4 2024. Why the slowdown? Look no further than the Federal Reserve's aggressive rate hikes to combat inflation, another problem exacerbated by tariffs, which drive up costs, and the uncertainty caused by the government's erratic trade policies. Businesses aren't investing, consumers aren't spending, and the stock market's volatility index, VIX, hit a two-year high of 28.5 in April 2025, signaling investor panic. But hey, at least we've got fair deals to look forward to, right? I roll. Oh, and just when you thought the economic clown show couldn't get any wilder, let's talk about the US-India trade deal, or should I say, the trade deal that isn't really a deal. Bessent says the US and India are very close to an agreement, but, plot twist, it's not an actual trade document, just a broad framework. Translation, we're gonna shake hands, take some photos, and call it progress, but don't expect any real changes. This is classic government playbook, promise big, deliver small, and hope nobody notices. But here's why this matters. India is the world's fifth largest economy, with a GDP of $3.9 trillion in 2024, according to the World Bank, and it's growing at a clip of 6.8% annually. A real trade deal could open up massive opportunities for US exporters, especially in tech, agriculture, and pharmaceuticals. But instead, we're stuck in limbo, with India imposing retaliatory tariffs on US goods, like a 20% tariff on apples and walnuts in 2023, and the US threatening to revoke India's Generalized System of Preferences, GSP, status. The result? US exports to India dropped by 7% in 2024, costing American businesses $2.4 billion, according to the US Trade Representative. But hey, who needs actual results when you've got frameworks to brag about? Now, let's get to the juicy part, how the government's mismanagement is pouring gasoline on this economic dumpster fire. First off, the Trump administration's obsession with tariffs as a cure-all is straight out of the 1930s playbook, specifically, the Smoot-Hawley Tariff Act, which turned a bad recession into the Great Depression. History lesson, folks, tariffs don't fix trade imbalances, they tank global trade. World trade volumes fell by 1.2% in 2024, the first decline since the pandemic, and the World Trade Organization, WTO, projects another 0.9% drop in 2025 if trade tensions persist. But hey, who needs facts when you've got political theater? Second, the government's flip-flopping on trade policy, escalating one day, teasing to escalation the next, is creating a fog of uncertainty that's paralyzing businesses. The National Association of Manufacturers Q1 2025 survey found that 78% of U.S. manufacturers cited trade policy uncertainty as their top concern, ahead of inflation and labor shortages. And when businesses don't invest, jobs don't grow, and the economy stalls. But don't worry, Bessent says the strongest relationship between Washington and Beijing is at the top. Oh, great, so while Trump and Xi are exchanging love letters, the rest of us are stuck in economic purgatory. And finally, let's not forget the Federal Reserve, which is stuck playing cleanup crew for the government's mess. The Fed's rate hikes, pushing the federal funds rate to 5.5% in April 2025, the highest since 2001, might tame inflation, but they're also crushing growth. The Conference Board's leading economic index, a key predictor of recessions, has been declining for 14 straight months as of April 2025, signaling a 67% chance of a U.S. recession by year-end. But hey, at least we've got fair deals with China and frameworks with India to look forward to, right? Sarcasm intensifies. So, what's the solution to this economic mess? Well, here at Boss Economics World, we're not afraid to say it, the government needs to get out of the way. Stop using tariffs as a political weapon, stop creating uncertainty with erratic policies, and start focusing on real structural reforms, like investing in domestic manufacturing, fixing our crumbling infrastructure, and negotiating actual trade deals that open markets, not close them. But don't hold your breath, folks. As long as the clowns in Washington are running the show, we're stuck in this economic circus. So, to all you finance pros and everyday folks watching, keep your eyes peeled, your wallets tight, and your popcorn ready, because this tariff soap opera is far from over. And that's a wrap for today's episode of Boss Economics World. If you're as fed up with this economic clownery as I am, smash that like button, subscribe, and share this video with everyone you know. Let's keep calling out the madness, one economic roast at a time. Until next time, stay boss, stay woke, and stay out of the economic crossfire. Peace.